Hello, welcome to Microeconomic, the Microeconomy Today. Publisher is McGraw Hill, and we're just going to go through chapter 1. Our author is Bradley Schiller. Just a brief summary. This is not a substitute for you reading the textbook. It's meant to be a complementary tool. All right, let's get to it. Chapter 1, we're just going to be discussing what is actually going on here, what is the subject matter of the book. This chapter, we are going to talk about scarcity, opportunity cost, the production curve, and how market and government approaches the economy in a slightly different manner. Our main goals for this: shape our economic outcomes, what is the role the government plays in the economy as a whole, and what it have for better decisions. This is one of the main reasons that you study economics, is to understand how the system works, or at least supposed to work, and how things should be done. That way you can hold a really good conversation as far as how things should be done. We'll cover the main problems, which happens to be resources, or the limits there are, the 3 core questions, which you will see repeated throughout the textbook, and how do you or who should answer these questions. First thing we're going to talk about is limitations. We have unlimited desires, but limited resources. We'd all like to be multimillionaires, but that would create a problem in and of itself. If we are all millionaires, who would be the one to serve us the meals when you go to a restaurant? It creates a problem. The 3 core questions every society has is, what are you going to make based on the resources that you have? If you don't have the resources, you need to go get the resources. How do you select what to make? Who are you going to make those goods and services for? So there'll be plenty of trade-offs, and that's the whole point of this. What gets made, how are you going to use the resources available, and who's going to be made for? Is it going to be a public good like a road, or is it going to be made for a specific group within the economy? The economy, there are a lot of definitions, but we're going to use the Texas simple definition. How do you allocate resources of production and consumption? We do this as a society. Normally, in a standard society, someone is elected or becomes the person in charge. They have influence on what is actually going to be made, how is it going to be made, and who is it going to be for. Slide 7. Because there is scarcity, you have a limited amount of time. That is the most valuable resource you have. How do you want to allocate it? Since you're studying a college class, I assume that there are things that you'd like to do besides studying the textbook. Because of time, that scarce resource, what are you going to allocate that most valuable of resources for? If you are taking a class on a college campus, what else could you be doing other than going to college? There's a trade-off. Most people go to college to get a different set of skills and delayed gratifications. If you have those skills, more opportunities present themselves. So that is what you're facing. We can't all be whatever the field is. There are limited resources. There are limited openings for that particular field. So there will be a conflict. Now that we understand there is scarcity in the world, again, we can't all have tickets to our favorite concert. We're all not going to be able to fit backstage. So when things are made, what we talk about are the factors of production. Basically, there are 4. Some books make 3, and I'll get to that in a second. The top 3 are land, labor, and capital. We'll get around to the definitions in a moment, but some textbooks put the entrepreneurial slot in with labor. It overlaps in a little bit of a way, and I'll get to that in the next slide. Slide 9. Land, we're referring to the physical location and any natural resources on it. Water, crude oil, certain minerals that you need for productions of, say, batteries or anything like that. Labor, These are the people that put the things together, whether that be a good or a service. If you go to a restaurant, someone waiting on your needs or waiting at your table, that is a service. That is a particular skill set. You go to a restaurant and the person can't get your order right, you find out that that is a very good skill set to have for that particular occupation. Capital refers to how do you get the final goods. Most people, when you say capital, some people think of a monetary amount. Well, capital is actually whatever you need to make the final good. Now, you need capital in the sense of money to buy the goods to make the finished product. If we're going back to the restaurant, you need a kitchen, you need the building itself, you need utensils, etc., etc. Entrepreneurship, the book touts that as someone who is actually trying to improve the resources and make more on the same amount of resources that you have. Some people like to put that into labor as a subset because you're the person who's trying to go outside what is normally done and look for a more effective, efficient means of production. So, depends on the textbook. In this one, we broke it up into a different category. Just remember, it doesn't mean that you're the one owning the business. It does not say that in the textbook. It refers to you being able to actually improve the process, making more of the limited resources that you have. So just keep that in mind. Again, these will probably be test questions. I guarantee you these 4 are going to be somewhere in there. Outputs. What do we mean by that? You can only have so much stuff coming from the resources that you have. If you want to make a wooden table, you're going to need wood. You'll need to cut down a tree somewhere in there. So how many trees do you have will limit how many wooden tables or desks that you can make. Therefore, the output is limited by how many trees are available, how many can you cut down, and so forth and so on. When you have limited resources, you have to choose. Do you want to make a table? Do you want to make a chair? Or do you want to go do something else? How do you allocate what is best? What is best is generally the market will tell you what is best, what the market is willing to pay for. So if no one wants, we'll use something a little more modern. A tablet versus a cell phone. Your production will be related to which one the market is telling you. That's what you see as far as what is being purchased. More people buying a phone, you're going to spend more resources on a phone than a tablet. You may not stop making tablets, but it's not going to be 10 phones and 10 tablets when the market indicates they want more phones. So you have to choose how to best allocate your resources to meet the needs of the market. And that leads us right into what an opportunity cost. Slide 11. You only have so much time and so much material and resources. Back to the land, labor, and capital. Let's say you are in charge of, we won't say Apple, let's say it is called the Orange Store. We sell cell phones, tablets, desktops, earbuds, all those lovely things that you see most electronic manufacturers making. The opportunity costs come in if I do something, I do A, I'm giving up B. In most situations, there's always an opportunity cost. You could choose A or B. You're going to college, you have a list of careers you can pursue and knowledge that you wish to gain. Because you don't have an unlimited amount of time, which one do you want to pursue? So if you enjoy history, you're giving up a language. Now, if you have enough time to pursue both, that's fine. But if your time is limited and you can only focus on one, the opportunity cost is, I'm going to study history, but I'm not going to have a lot of time to study languages or a different culture if that's what you also find interesting. So always, there's a trade-off. Again, this is probably something that's going to come up as far as a test question. how much can you make based on the limited resources that you have, which is why we go back to the orange store and we're talking about, do you want to spend more time on a cell phone? Do you want to spend more time on a tablet? Do you want to do desktops, earbuds, a watch to track your heart rate and things of that nature and how many steps you count? Can't make them all unlimitedly. You only have so much material, so many workers, so much space in a factory. So where do you want to actually allocate those resources? Slide 13. If we were going to map those out on the production possibility schedule, this is what it would look like. We'll kind of use this and move back into the electronics in a moment. Your factory is only going to be able to make 2 items. We do this to make it simple: trucks or tanks. And as you can see on the left column, the production of trucks. If you wish to make any tanks, you're going to have to give up the production of 10 trucks. So you won't be able to produce 50 per day. Again, all the resources devoted to that. If you need to produce any tanks, you're going to have to not produce 10 trucks. Then you get to 20 tanks. And if you'll notice, every time you need to have more tanks, you have to give up some percentage of trucks. And if you give up another 10, you get another 10 tanks. If you go from 30 to 20, you are only going to get 8 tanks additional. It really isn't a straight one-to-one relationship, is what it's telling you. For the sake of argument, you decide you want to produce this, you're going to have to give up that. You don't have unlimited money, unlimited space to make things, unlimited factories, unlimited labor. So there will be a trade-off. And if you start to map that out, it will look like this. This is why it's called the curve. And what you're going to find is it's not a straight one-to-one, which might make a nice straight line, but this is why it's given the curve idea. You map the two, and as you give up 10 units of a truck, you'll get more production as far as the tank. Now, there could be any number of reasons why it's not a one-to-one relationship and why it slowly diminishes over time. That's into manufacturing production. We're not going to discuss that, but this is typically what a curve would look like. Again, keep in mind this is a simple curve. We're not getting into complex issues. Something that, again, will come across as far as any quiz or an exam. Law of opportunity, you have to give up something to get something else. Usually you trade one service or good for another particular service or good. Textbook decides to use as an example North Korea, not the biggest country in the world. Population ranks 50th. They're roughly about 175 countries, somewhere in their ballpark. So 50, okay, you're in the top third, but you have the 4th largest military because they spend an enormous amount of their natural resources on the military. If you look and map that out against other countries, they spend a huge amount of the available resources towards military production. Not going to get into a geopolitical commentary, but just for reference, the United States spends more on the military than most countries. As a matter of fact, you have to put a couple of countries together to equal what the U.S. spends because of the large GDP. But as a percentage of gross domestic product, which you'll get to a little later, in macro, you see, this is all they focus on. And the trade-off is you don't have resources for other things. Efficiency refers to you using the maximum amount of leverage on the resources that you have. Essentially, that curve that we're looking on, you are on the production of the curve. We'll get to that in a minute. And inefficiency is you're not on that particular curve. So what does that have to do with you? If you are ever in a business and you're trying to map out allocation of resources, you can figure out how much you can produce. If it's not on the curve, then you're being inefficient. Again, a point you'll probably see in some type of testing. If we're looking at these points A, B, and C, that means everything is used to its peak performance. If you are at point Y, that means you're being inefficient because you aren't on the maximum production possibility curve. So in here, you can either make a few more units of tanks, or you can make a few more trucks, or at least one more tank and one more truck. You either move to point B or C. You can't, realistically, you wouldn't want to stay at Y because that'd be inefficient, and that is resources that should be made. You're going to have to pay for the labor anyway. They should make as many tanks or trucks as possible. And point X is not feasible. So if you're ever doing any calculating of what's going on in the factory and you get point X, somebody is changing the numbers in a manner you should look into. Economic growth. As time goes on, you should become more proficient at what you're doing. You should be able to actually generate more productivity as you go on. You should be much better at a task after a couple of months than you are the first day, essentially. And we get back to our favorite questions. Once again, slide 22. What are you going to make? How are you going to make it? And who are you making it for? If you're going to make sweaters, are you going to use manufacturing or are you going to make them by hand? If you're going to make them by hand, you're probably going to a wealthier market and you're probably going to charge more. If you're going to produce them for the average person, you're going to get into mass production, then you're probably going to use a machine. All right, this is one of those key concepts. If you're going to remember anything from economics, this is one of those things that you should remember. And the only economist, if no one else should remember, you should remember the name Adam Smith. He came up with the theory of the invisible hand. What do we mean by that? He has known for two famous books. Wealth of Nations is one. In the book, he discusses the market will adjust to what is needed. If you're going to have the choice between making all those electronic devices, the market will tell you that you probably need to make more cell phones. The government doesn't need to tell you that. The market will let you know. And one of the theories that he had was known as laissez-faire. The government shouldn't interfere because the market will tell you what it wants. That mechanism will let you know, make more cell phones or we'll take our business elsewhere. A couple other economic theories. On the other extreme is Karl Marx. Again, if you want to get into economic history and some of the great thinkers, you can start looking these people up. Marx believed that the average citizens, the people, own the factors of production, so the government should be involved almost totally. Keynesian economic theory says the government plays an active role. It does not do everything, but it should have a very active role. We'll get into a few more theories. Conservative economists believe in laissez-faire, minimum government intervention, leave it alone. That's what laissez-faire means, let it be. Liberals believe that there's a need for government intervention to improve the outcomes. And throughout the world, there's a give and take all around. What may be acceptable before may not be now. This is something that realistically shouldn't be fixed in stone. It should be depending on the marketplace, depending on the economic background, all these other things. Do you want to lean one way or another? 26. Free enterprise. Again, very little government intervention, only when it's needed. So you see the representation here. The majority, especially of economists, believe that the free market economy, the market will decide winners and losers. And you can look at each and every example they have on an average. Most of the time, the world is going to the point of, about 60% of the time, leave it alone. Close to 30 disagree, and then there are people in the middle. Most economies are mixed. They rely on both. It's just a question of how much of one versus the other. A market failure in this case is when the mix is not correct. It could work badly on both sides. If you're into manufacturing and the runoff from your manufacturing has to go somewhere and the company decides to just put it in a nearby lake, that is a bad idea, and this is where you get failures. There has to be a balance where you're weighing in not only the stockholders but the stakeholders. Stockholders have the financial interests, stakeholders are everybody else. Essentially, everyone has some stake in the outcome of the business. Government failure is when there's too much intervention and you don't, improve the economic outcome. The system just happens to work worse than when you started. In economics, you're trying to understand how to allocate the resources. You understand all of these things that go with it. Okay. Always have the entertaining pets when you're trying to record. All right, we'll move on to slide 31. Again, a couple of key terms: normative and positive analysis. Usually that is called a normative and positive statements. A normative statement is what you believe should happen. A positive analysis or statement is how it is. If you ever get into a discussion with someone, you can ask, is that a normative analysis or a positive analysis? Are you telling me what you believe should happen, or are you able to produce some type of fact and research to tell me this is what is happening? So one is subjective, one is objective. We can measure the results, then it's a positive statement or an analysis. We are in a micro class. Think microscope, looking at something small. Macroeconomics, or Big Mac, we're studying the economy as a whole, usually a country or something of that nature. Just use that quick analogy. You ever see that somewhere to tell you the difference between the two. In theory and reality, most of what you see in economics, and a lot of economists don't want to hear this, is a theory. It is not a fact. It is not a scientific fact. It is not water boiling at 100 degrees because we use that as a measurement. It is not gravity. It is a theory because we are observing human behavior. It is extremely vast and extremely complex. So these are basic theories of what should happen. And there are many, many different variations of an economic theory. So don't be surprised, for those of you who want to go a little further, to understand that there is a plethora of information out there. Ceteris paribus. If we're going to run an experiment, you have to leave a lot of things fixed. Anything that moves is the variable that you are measuring, and that is what it means. Everything else stays the same, but we're only going to look at the production of cell phones and tablets. See how that affects our production outline. See how that pertains to demand and things of that nature. So keep that in mind. All things left alone. Nothing else changes. We only change one thing. We do not have perfect information. We're taking educated guesses. Don't look at this and say, well, this is absolute. It is not absolute. It is an educated guess based on people trying to assume some reasonable assumptions. Now we're getting into green politics. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I'll let you go through quite a bit of that. Political decision is an example of, do you want to spend money on green technology, or you want to go back to our old fossil fuel analogies? What do we need for this? How do we make the change? What else could the resources be used for? As you can see here, medicine, education, defense. So this is an example of, okay, you have political integration with economics. That's originally what it was called, actually. You're trying to decide where to allocate resources. Is it not only green versus fossil fuels, it's green versus we're going to spend the money elsewhere because we don't have unlimited cash or time. Okay, rest of it is nothing but a couple of background slides. So that takes care of chapter 1. Remember, this is a supplement. Read your textbooks. Talk to your instructor if you have any questions. And I'll see you in chapter 2.